And so, Father, we
Please, we
thank
can
you
hear
this
you.
afternoon for making it possible for all of us to meet here again for another webinar. Father, as we start this program, we ask that you come and take absolute control of everything. Now, at the end, glory and honor shall be given to your holy name. This and many more we ask from you. Amen.
Yeah, amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kobna. Okay, so now to the welcome address. As I said earlier, the president was supposed to give the welcome address, but due to some inconveniences, she couldn't. Hello, please, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, please.
Please, can you hear me?
Yeah, Agnes, you can hear you.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay. Please, I was saying, due to some inconveniences, our president couldn't join us for the webinar. Let's say for now, but he should be joining later. So I'm standing in for her to deliver the welcome address. So we apologize for that. Okay, so on behalf of the president, I welcome you all to the part 1 of the November edition of the webinar series. We give reference to God for another opportunity to meet again to learn, relearn and unlearn. I stand on behalf of the chapter and honor the presence of our dignitaries present, Mr. Henry Entry, who is our founder, our special guest, Dr. Isaac Japata, and guest speaker, Mr. Simon Obiri Yeboah, and also all protocol observed. To the entire membership of the Awesome Takwa Students chapter and non-members, you are all warmly welcome. The Awesome Takwa Students chapter is known to expose and keep its members updated on industrial trends through webinar series, where we have various speakers across the world giving insightful presentations to participants. Our last webinar had our speaker touching on graduate studies, the checklist, and feedback from participants were very positive and overwhelming. Today's webinar is a top-up for the previous webinar, where our speaker, who is a Ghanaian graduate but working in Australia, is going to share his perspective on how to penetrate the job market in Australia and any other parts of the world. He will also share with us his experience through schooling and working outside Ghana. This webinar is going to be insightful and exciting as well. Let's all get our pens and notepads ready to write down our questions and key points as our speaker takes us through this presentation. Once again, you are all welcome, and we hope you enjoy this presentation. Thank you. Hello, please, is the moderator in now? Hello, I think she's still having some issues joining. So please, Dr. Isaac Japata, kindly give us the opening remarks for the webinar.
Okay, so hello everyone. And I must appreciate your effort, Anima, at jumping at the microphone and trying to catch up and keep the team up while your moderator wasn't around. It's a really excellent effort. I think it's quite exciting for me to make opening remarks related to this talk. And I think I'd say, first of all, that it's really important to hear people's testimonials, people's stories of how they move from the life of a graduate or final year student into a life of a working person. That journey is not as easy as many of us get it to be. I remember my days when I finished university. There were some who had the job even before they finished. There were some who had to struggle a lot to get a job. Some had 5 years later, some had 2 years later, some decided to venture into other areas apart from their usual careers. I've been quite fortunate to see Simon's journey over the last few years, from when he been looking for work and when he's got the work now. And some of the challenges we've talked about that. He drop into my office every now and then and we'll have a chat. So I really think you would gain a lot from hearing from Simon. He's a very smart chap. I tend to call him Eagle, but definitely listen to his story and ask questions. And I think he's really got a lot to share with you. So without too much say, I will hand over back to Enima or whoever is the moderator. Take over.
Okay, Dr. Isaac Japata, thank you so much for the opening remarks. Thank you so much. Okay, so hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So please, what we have next is introduction of the speaker. Okay, so please, I'll call upon Mr. Hello. So please, I'll call upon Mr. Simon Obiri Yeboah to come in for the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hi. Yeah, hi. My name is Simon. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Yeah. All right, cool. Just all right. So my name is Simon. Yeah. So I'm a graduate chemical process engineer from Queensland University of Technology. It is an honor to be with you and share with you about my journey as a process engineer in Australia, and also to talk about the job market in Australia from a graduate standpoint. Also, I will share with you why maybe it is important to do your bachelor's and master's in Ghana, especially when you don't get any scholarship or sponsorship from your family. I forgot, I don't have my, can you please give me a bit of time to get my power slides on? Sorry. Running a little bit late, my apologies. Sorry.
No problem, sir.
That's fine. Okay, good. Can you see my slides, please?
Yes, please. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right, so yeah, just a little bit nervousness because of my public speaking, but I think I should be fine now. All right, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself, where I come from, and my uni. So I'll start now. I'm a graduate chemical process engineer from Queensland University of Technology, and it is an honor to share with you about my journey as a process engineer in Australia, and also to talk about the job market in Australia from a graduate standpoint. Also, I will share with you why maybe it is important to, that you do your bachelor's and master's in Ghana, especially when you don't get any scholarship or sponsorship from your family. I will also discuss with you about some of the different types of visas available and how to get them. Just want to remind you that I'm not a migration agent. This is all fact and my opinion. All right, so I will show you Brisbane. I lived here for 9 years and I really enjoyed it. It's a really beautiful city and with nice people. I recently relocated to Western Australia for a new role. Okay, slides. All right. Before I start my presentation, or I get into my presentation, I want to give praise to God and use this as an opportunity to express my gratitude to Mr. Henry Entry and Dr. Isaac Dopata. They have contributed immensely towards my professional and personal development. Okay, so Mr. Henry is more than a mentor to me, as I showed you, and I cannot give too much details now. And Dr. Isaac mentors me spiritually and professionally. He has been a great source of inspiration to me. I wish I can give a lot of details as well. They check on me regularly, sometimes something that I appreciate very much and hold in high esteem. Okay, so I will tell you a little bit about my journey. How did I get to Australia? How did I get to Australia? And I will talk about how to get affordable school. And I will share with you how I did my research. Okay, so how did I get to Australia? Well, how I got into Australia is actually interesting. I had no clue where it was and what to expect. I didn't know anyone there, and no one told me about it because I didn't ask. I must say I was very naive at the time. I didn't take a lot of things into consideration due to my lack of experience and insight, and I paid a high price for it. I remember that I started my research navigating the internet was challenging as it was all new to me. To be honest with you, I didn't know even how to operate a PC well. Yet I did everything all by myself without giving it to those we refer to as connection man in Ghana. I did all the paperwork for my visa all by myself as well. Financially, things were very tough as I come from a family that lived below the poverty line in Ghana. How was it possible then to leave Ghana, get admission, go through the visa process, given the few challenges that I just shared? Sorry, I need a bit of drink. The key to that was my persistence, perseverance, and not giving up. Just to name a few, I used to walk around magazine. Those of you who live in Kumasi, magazine. Tafo Inshaiso Swame, selling files to offices during the day and teaching during the evening to raise money to support myself. So as you can see, even though Ghana is tough, but you can still create your own job, or you can create something. It doesn't have to be too big. And when I go to Australia, I implemented the same strategy, and it helped me to succeed in my journey. After long hours of work, working on food for many hours, I would go to the internet cafe to do research. And I did this on a daily basis. I spent lots of time researching all the schools in Australia, and this helped me to make a good choice. Yeah, and this helped me to make a good choice. Yeah, it took me 3 years to do all this, to get into Australia. So I don't expect anyone, to give up in 3 months when you don't, achieve whatever you want. Okay. All right, so after getting my visa in Ghana, I thought that was the end of my struggles. I must say that I got that wrong too. Life overseas, especially for international students, is very tough, especially if you don't have your fees. In my case, I had to self-fund myself and to pay my own rent, pay my own food and transportation. I will share with you some of the jobs that are available that you can do to support yourself. All right. So I will talk a little bit about tuition fees and scholarship. So generally, there's no scholarship for international students, especially those who are doing masters and bachelors. For masters, sometimes there's a little bit, but usually students from the Middle East, especially from Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, get sponsorship from their government. Okay, so in Australia, there is what we call HEX. If you can see on my screen, HEX is a government support for domestic students or the citizens. And in Australia, the domestic students are classified as people from New Zealand or people with permanent residency. And if you are eligible, the government gives you the HEX. And the HEX help them to do their degree while, so they don't have to pay for the tuition fee until they graduate. And even after graduation, they have to get job before the government starts to take it from their salary. International students have a different story. So international students have to pay their fees before the commencement of the semester, and it has to be paid in full as well. Sometimes international students do have an opportunity to do installment payment. Installment payment, for example, at QUT, I went to QUT, as I mentioned, you have two opportunities to do two installment payment for your entire studies. And after that, if you don't get your tuition fees, they will then expel you. And if you're expelled, it means that you have to come back home. So the reason why sometimes if you're applying for a student visa, they will ask you for your statement, bank statement. They take the bank statement from you in order to assess the financial capacity of whoever is sponsoring you, whether your family or your government. And so in terms of scholarship as well, I want to talk a little bit about scholarship. Is there any scholarship for international students and domestic students? Yes, there is scholarship available, but usually if you're doing masters and bachelors, you don't get scholarship. The scholarship is usually for the domestic students. And also the Australian government gives scholarship to PhD students. So if you are looking forward to come to Australia for especially your bachelor's or master's, you have to make sure that you are thinking through this properly, either to get a sponsorship from family or otherwise, if you get here, you wouldn't get any scholarship from government. And if you don't get any scholarship, that means you have to really, really work long hours. And that is illegal, actually. And if you are reported to the government, you can be deported for that. All right, so on my right over here, I'm showing a picture. This is a sample tuition fee from University of New South Wales, and is the average tuition fee, which means a year. So you can see for the undergraduate fees, which is 43,750. So if you are doing an undergraduate degree, yearly, that is how much you need to pay, 43,750. And if you are doing something like masters, you have to pay 40,660. And the living cost too is estimated to be 31,980. And campus accommodation. For example, when I went to QUT, there wasn't anything like campus accommodation. You have to rent outside, and most universities in Australia are just like that. As I mentioned earlier, it's advisable to do your bachelor's in Ghana or your master's in Ghana, just because it's very, very, very expensive. To work and save up 43,000 yearly is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I have personally done that, and that require you to work long hours. And on top of that, you have to do your assignments, you have to go to lectures, and you have to attend tutorials as well. And there are group presentations to do, and there are final exams every term or every semester to do. So this makes the life of international students, especially for the for those doing bachelor degree and master's degree. And two, the reason why I said it's advisable to do your bachelor's and master's in Ghana is because when you have to work that so much, that means you don't have enough time to study, and you wouldn't have enough time to network as well. And it has its consequences. If you ask Dr. Isaac, it was really tough for me because I feel like I personally couldn't get enough time to study. So so I had lots of gaps in yeah, I had lots of gaps in my understanding of the concepts, of my degree. So I was talking to one of your colleagues, and I was so impressed, and I wish I had that opportunity. He said, in Ghana, sometimes you even have, or you do like group study. You can visit your friends, their hostels, whereby you go to, whereby you study together. You prepare for exam, and you do activities together. But in my case, just because I needed to work so much, and it's not just me, other students who who came here with no sponsorship or with no scholarship, they had to do the same thing. And it really impacts you in many ways. You don't have time to study, and you don't have time even for social life. You don't have time to network. And I didn't have enough, I didn't really have any network system in place. And after uni, it really affected me when I wanted to get a job. Okay, so before I was talking about tuition fee, I'm showing these images. So if you come from a family, that's Sam Jones. If you come from a family of Sam Jones, a rich family like Sam Jones, or Kwame Osei, who is popularly known as Kwame Despite, it means you don't have to worry about tuition fee. But if you come from a family which doesn't have enough money like myself, it means that you really, really have a big responsibility, because it's very tough academically. Usually people say it's easier studying overseas. I think, I'm not too sure, there hasn't been a single Ghanaian I've met who believe this to be true. Their standard is very high. They check for plagiarism, which means you can't copy someone's work. At the moment, I'm not too sure if you have what we call 10-in. 10-in is a software whereby if you submit your assignment, it's able to analyze if you took it from somewhere, if you took it from your school, or if if it will show all the percentages of where your work is coming from. So that makes it challenging. So it means that you really, really have to make sure that you understand what you are doing, because getting help from someone or taking the assignment from someone will lead you into serious consequences. And that happened to me in my final year. In my final year, the last semester, I ran into a big problem in plagiarism, which really got me into problem. All right, I want to talk a little bit too about PhD studies. So I said earlier that it's not advisable to come here for your bachelor's and master's. Why did I say that? It's because there's no scholarship. And as I showed you the fees, the annual fee to pay, 43,000. You have to do lots of work in order to raise that. And people who work full time are not even able to save that. And someone may ask, why were you able to do that then? It was really tough. And I will tell you how I was able to do that. When I got into Australia, I would say by God's grace, I came here with less than $1,000. And the first week, $300 was just, was just spent on my rent, just my rent. And I realized that after the first week, I just have a few dollars left. So fortunately for me, like a friend, I had two friends who came for me I was living in a student hostel, and they took me to the apartment. And after a couple of days, they introduced me to a Ghanaian family. And I lived with them for a month. And after that too, they introduced me to a pastor, and I stayed with him for 4 months. And after that too, I met someone in the African community who helped me. And actually, he had 2 houses, and he gave me one of them to live in. And that was such a blessing. Why am I saying this? Getting all these opportunities or blessings helped me to save money. If you have to pay rent, it's very, very expensive, as I showed you from the previous slide. So I showed you from the previous slide. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I showed you from the previous slide. I'm sorry. It's just a new PowerPoint. I'm still getting used to it. Yeah, I showed you the power from the previous power slide. And as you can see, the cost of living was estimated at 31,000. That's very, very, very expensive, and rent is really constitute a huge part of that amount. So over here, you should expect to pay a weekly between 150 and 250. And if you add it up, that's a lot of money. And I had this huge blessing by living with people for 2.5 years. And that really helped me to save up in order to pay for my fees. And plus, in order to pay for my fees, that meant I needed to do a lot of sacrifice. So I didn't have much social life. And so even though by doing that, it helped me to pay for my fees, but it also affected me because yeah, you can only develop your network through by socializing and by going out. But if you are so busy working and just trying to find what to eat and your tuition fee, that just doesn't make it possible. Okay, so because of that, coming here for bachelor's and master's is just not ideal. But I will encourage people, if they want to pursue PhD, and why. If you want to pursue PhD studies, the Australian government award full scholarship to PhD students. And the reason why, I guess they award full scholarship to international students or international candidates is because their own people after their bachelor's just don't want to be in a classroom. Yeah, it's not all of them, but yeah, most of them just prefer to stick to their bachelor's and get a job. And just because, this nation of Australia is really value like research, and PhD is a research-based degree. So the Australian government, prefer to attract internationals to come in to do that. And because of that, they give them the full scholarship. So the scholarship actually covers your tuition, and it covers your rent and transportation. So that means you don't have to go and work like bachelor students or people pursuing master's degree, because for them, they have to work and raise that 43,000 or whatever amount they have to pay to the university. And also, if you do PhD after your graduation, you get 4 years. They give you a graduate, you apply for a graduate visa, which allows you to live in Australia for 4 years. While in the case of those who do bachelor's and master's, you only have 2 years. And after the 2 years, if you are not able to get your permanent residency, what it means is you have to return back to your home country. And at the moment, there is a new visa called the Global Talent Initiative. And if you do PhD, there's a higher chances of you getting the Global Talent Initiative. I know a couple of friends, at least more than 4, who have been able to get their permanent residency. And it's all because they did PhD. One friend, actually, I spoke to one friend 2 days ago, and he shared with me the assignment. I had my permanent residency, and guess how long it took him? It took him just 3 weeks. In my case, or if you come as a bachelor, student or as a master's student, to get your permanent residency, there's a point system, or the permanent residency is given on the basis of merit, and which means you have to meet, you have to get certain points, and so at the moment you have to get 65 points, and the points I will explain it a little bit. So if you do your degree in Australia, if you do bachelor's degree, you get 15 points for it. And if you do master's degree too, you get 15 points for it. And because you did your degree in Australia, they give you 5 points for it, making what? 20 points. And depending on your age, if you are between the age of 25 to 30, 33, they give you 25 points as well, which will then make it 45. From the age of 33, it means it reduces by 5 points. And also work experience, counts. So if you have work experience in Australia from 3 years, you also have additional points of 5. So anyway, so if you do bachelor's, so in my case, if you do bachelor's in Australia, just because you don't have work experience, it's so hard for you to get that point. So it means when you have to apply for your residency, it's so hard for you to meet the point system. So even though the minimum point system is 65, but Home Affairs actually, just because there are lots of people applying, 65 is just not enough. So that makes it very hard to get your residency, and you require residency in order to get a job, and that if you don't have the permanent residency or the citizenship, that could be a really huge setback for you. So just my personal opinion in terms of thing that I've been stressing on, getting your degree in Ghana, and not just that, also bachelor's and master's, and not just that, also try and get some work experience, because especially for those of you who are doing mining related programs, if you have work experience, it makes it easier for you to get a job. But otherwise, if you don't have the work experience and you just come to Australia for your master's or for your bachelor's, it's going to be very, very, very tough. And I have experienced it. Yeah, so I have experienced it. I will take this opportunity to talk a little bit about, networking. Networking is everything that, we need. And in my case, just because I was so busy, working to support myself, I just couldn't, network much. So that really, affected me in terms of getting a job. And so I would really, suggest that while you're busy, studying and catching up with other responsibilities, you make some time to, network, because you would really, really need it in the end. I will talk a little bit about the importance of mentorship with you, because that has really, that has really helped me in my journey. So I want to share with you some importance of mentorship and how it's favored me to get a job. I will say that some of your mentors may not be able to, give you a connection that may lead you to a job, but do not underestimate their role in your professional growth and development. Some mentors simply help you to adjust or think. For example, in my case, Dr. Isaac can tell you better. When he first, met me, my mind was programmed, my mind was not programmed to think as an engineer. My thinking was all about business. Mr. Henry has also played a vital role in my career by mentoring me. It all happened just one day, when a good friend of mine put me in touch with him. That was a huge turning point for me in my career. I was very stuck with little hope of, securing a job in my field as an engineer. Why? Because it was just because of the visa. I had a few opportunities, I had a few interviews, but then all of them required me to have permanent residency or citizenship, and I didn't have it. By meeting Mr. Henry, it really, really helped. So you can see over here under the bottom of the slide. So around about in 2018, I didn't know him. I was just on LinkedIn and I came across his profile. So I just decided to, send him a message, and I said, "Good morning, sir, from Australia." And I didn't get any response from him. And why didn't I get any response from him? Because my message had no context, because you just can't message anyone like that, like "good morning," and you expect the person to respond back to you and, start to talk to you. So it was after, my friend introduced him to me that he responded. So I will share with you like a few things, it's so hard. So as you can see, I really, so it's challenging for me even at the moment, talking. So, one of the things that could help you is, through mentorship, share your challenges with your mentors, and it could help you. If you're on LinkedIn and you just don't know how to send messages to people, share it with your mentors, and they could help you, teach you how to do that. And and they could also help you to set appointment with, people, because because it's true, by meeting people, for example, catching up for a drink. If you're in Australia, you need to be able to put yourself out there to do that. You need to be able to communicate with the people in the industry. And sometimes it's not easy, especially for, for new graduates or for people who are still studying. So yeah, you can get help from your mentors. So yeah, so he came on a holiday, how I met him, he came on a holiday, and that was when he invited me to his house. He spoke to me for more than an hour, sharing with me some of the challenges he's faced as a young engineer in countries he had worked in. That really encouraged me and gave me hope that I could also be successful in my career. He educated me about the importance of networking, which today I share the same insight. Again, with friends who are in a similar, situation. Now I have learned my lessons that you do not have to live isolated professionally, especially when you are struggling. So I want to share something about LinkedIn versus face-to-face networking. For me, it is great to have a great LinkedIn profile, but from an experience, it may not get you far if you do not know how to use it effectively. For example, I sent Mr. Harry a request more than a year before I met him. The message I sent did not mean anything much as it lacked context. As I said before, look at the message I sent. Were you going to respond to such a message if it was you? I know you're a good and supportive person, but I doubted that you were going to respond. Yeah, because I said good morning from Australia. That just wasn't enough. What lesson could we take from our experience? We live in an age of knowledge and information. You can learn from, we can learn how to contact people properly if you want to get a response back from them. How do you do this? Get help from your mentors, share with them your challenges, and ask them to teach you how to get an appointment to meet up in person, people in person. People help people they know or by referral. Especially when you have no experience under your belt, you need to be proactive and also show enthusiasm. Networking is everything. It takes time to build it and see and the importance of it, but also delivers the right result at the right time. It was through networking that I secured my 2 professional roles. I didn't have the contacts myself. It was Mr. Henry's contacts that I benefited from. As you can see, your network just don't benefit you as a person. You can use it to help a family, and you can use it to help families and friends as it helped me in my case. Is networking just what you need? People can introduce you to their contacts, but then they may not be able to influence the decision making when it comes to whether they give you the job or not. For example, Mr. Henry paved the way for me, but I had to prove that I can be useful to them when they offer me the position. So when I went, went for the interview, the panel asked me a question. I'm just using this as an example. They asked me how was my travel. I didn't know what to say, and I said to myself, this was my response I gave. So I said to myself, look, I went blank. And I said to myself, just remember your labor of day and night. So I really have to think, I have to be quick and think. So this was the response that I gave. I said, driving to this place is one of the most special experience I've had. And I said, wow, it is so green here. I was referring to the vegetation when I said this. And I added that I wish that I can see this almost every day on my way to work. The reason why I said all that was because I realized that. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Can you hear me?
Please, we
Sorry?
can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I thought someone was. Okay. So I said all that because I realized that maybe they were struggling to get someone to stay on the job because it was regional. Yeah, so the place is called Tarago, and the population it's like a village in Australia. We call it a country town. It's a population of less than 400 people, and especially the young Australians wouldn't just want to go there. So when I went there, I just had to give them a reason why I was still on the job. So yeah, so I realized that how to. So I told them, look, I really like the vegetation, and I would like to I see this every day by coming to work. Yeah, so so I said something. Always ask yourself, what can you use to your advantage? You need to be a quick thinker. And I recommend that if you don't have a copy of Mr. Henry's book, you get one for yourself, because yeah, it is loaded with lots of good stuff. He shared lots of what his story, how he went about job interviews during the beginning of his career. And yeah, I have personally learned a lot from it. So if you don't have a copy, try and get yourself a copy, and I think it would really encourage you. Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much. I wish I could have really give a very coherent presentation. Yeah, it didn't go as I expected, but I think that if you have questions now, I'll be very glad to answer them, and think I'll be in a very much clear mind and good headspace to answer some of your questions, especially from scholarship, and why I said, if it's advisable for people to to do their bachelor's in Ghana and even get work experience before they move to Australia. Yeah, so if you have questions at this stage, just feel free to ask them, and I think that I'll be very much happy to respond to them. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, well, so does anyone has a question in relation to, you can ask me about application, you can ask me about, giving, yeah, I did jobs, just in case if you want to come, I did jobs for you, I did jobs around for people to do to raise money for, their tuition fees. Yeah, I'll be very much happy to answer those questions. And yeah, if you have anything related to studies as well in Australia, I think I can share my views on them. Yeah, because yeah, this is what I came here for, and I did that for 5 years. So I have a bit of insight and understanding into studying in Australia and what's next after your graduation, the visa process, if you want to stay in Australia. Yeah, what processes do you have to go through? Yeah, so if you have questions around them, yeah, I'll be very much happy to help. Yeah.
Hello. Hello, Mr. Yeboah. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Please, yeah, okay. Thanks so much for the presentation. It was very insightful and enlightening. Please, for now, we have a section for the questions and answers. But for now, we would have to call in Mr. Henry to give us some industrial updates. So afterwards, the questions and answers would come in, please. So thanks so much.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much for that.
Yes, please. Mr. Henry, please, if you are around, take us through the section.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, please.
Yes, we can hear you. Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon. All right. First of all, thanks to Dr. Zapata. It's very late in Australia, taking the time to join us. Same with Simon. You should be in bed by now, but you sacrificed your time to share your experience with us. So thank you very much. I just want to fill some gaps and also clarify a few areas on Mr. Simon's speech before I give you the industry updates. Now, he talked about scholarships not available. Maybe I should put some clarity on it. What he meant was government scholarships. So government scholarships are not available for those doing bachelor's and master's, but for PhDs. However, there are other forms of scholarships. So for instance, there is the Australia Africa Awards that our own Mr. Isaac Sam went on for his master's program. That's based on 3 years experience after graduation and providing evidence that you will not stay in Australia. So on that scholarship, you cannot stay in Australia for even 1 year. You have to return after your course. So in the case of Isaac Sam, because he had a job already with Idriprim and he had a study leave without pay, it made it very easier for him to go on that scholarship. And there are a number of Ghanaians who have been on that scholarship as well. Some universities also have research grants, teaching assistantships, research assistantships for master's and PhD programs. There isn't much for masters. There are some, but very competitive. But for PhDs, it's not as difficult as it is for masters. There are also in-country scholarships. For instance, in Ghana, we have the Commonwealth scholarships. So Commonwealth scholarship can take you to any Commonwealth country, and Australia is part of the Commonwealth. So people get scholarships on Commonwealth and go to Australia. There is the Ghana Government Scholarship from the Ghana Secretariat, Scholarship Secretariat. There are the GNPC scholarships and so on. So you can take advantage of those in-country regional scholarships to pursue your master's. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other one is the skilled migration. You don't have to be schooling in Australia. There are a number of Ghanaians who finished their bachelor's and master's and have gone to Australia on skilled migration. So you don't have to have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in Australia to go on skilled migration. The first criteria is your degree has to be the equivalent of that of an Australian degree. So for instance, the mining engineers who came in had to demonstrate that their transcripts, they had to show their transcripts, their work experience. It goes to the Institute of Engineers. I think on one occasion, I was part of the assessors, those who assess those transcripts and so on. And some applications came to me. So I had to assess and give advice whether those qualifications are equivalent to the qualification in Australia. So once the institute, so if you are a doctor, then it has to go to the medical board. If you are an electrical engineer, it goes to the Institute of Engineers, for instance. So that's the criteria, then age and other things come into effect. So that's the skilled migration. Other gaps, he talked about working for 2 years or 4 years, depending on whether you're doing a master's or PhD. Those 2 years should be in, if you are a mining engineer, it has to be in mining or related fields. Processing engineer, the same thing. You cannot go and do a master's degree in metallurgy and go and work in the food industry with that type of, unless that thing is related to metallurgy. So it has to be very specific. The same thing applies in the United States and other countries. So I wanted to take the opportunity to fill those gaps. In the context of his LinkedIn, let me clarify. I'm not as mean as some of you may think, that I didn't respond. So he sent the LinkedIn message. And in those days, I was so busy that I wasn't checking LinkedIn. So I had a secretary who had access to my LinkedIn account. And the secretary will go in and extract important messages for me to respond, or guide her to respond. In the context of Simon's, it all says is good afternoon, sir, or something along those lines. And therefore, the secretary didn't pick it up because she didn't think it was important. Now, last week, I got a message from somebody from Obiri, and it was very contextual. He clarified, first of all, he connected me, and then he came up with a statement that I've gotten a job in an overseas country. You are very well known in those areas. Please provide me advice whether I should stay in my current role or move into that role. So he provided that context. So straight away, this guy needed about 1 week to think. So I had to provide guidance, get some more information, and give him advice. So when you're sending somebody, I know especially some of you will send a message on WhatsApp and say, good morning, sir. And we wait until you respond before they actually say their message. And sometimes the response doesn't come for about 2 weeks. And the moment you respond, then he said, oh, I need help in this area or advice. But he could have put all those things in that WhatsApp or LinkedIn and so on. So note that very well. Now, back to industry updates. Some of you would have heard that Wasa mine has been bought by some Chinese company. So Wasa is owned by Golden Star Resources. They owned Pristia and Wasa, both underground mines. The company, as a strategy, decided to leave Ghana, and therefore they sold the Pristia mines to Future Global Resources. And now they have sold Wasa to a company called Shifeng Geelong Gold Mining, which is a Chinese company, for an amount of $470 million. Now, some of you think it's already done, but I'll take the opportunity to maybe give you some education on mergers and acquisitions. The same Shifeng Geelong tried to buy the Babiani mine. It was all announced, but the transaction was never closed. And Asante, a Canadian company, ended up buying the Babiani mine. It's because of the way mergers and acquisitions work. So for now, they have offered $470 million, but it's only the directors of the company who have accepted that. They own 34% of the company. So they have accepted the valuation. What it means is Golden Star Resources is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So if the share price is $10 per share, and then somebody offers $15 per share, it's attractive because it's going to make a lot of money, especially if you have 5,000 shares or 10,000 shares. So for them, it was attractive. But now they have to convince the remaining 66%. So there is going to be a shareholders vote. Now, there are two types of acquisitions. There's the friendly one, and then there's the forced one. So in this context, it's friendly because the directors have accepted the share price that was offered. So the directors then will convince the other shareholders to accept it. So it's a friendly one. Now, when it is friendly, they can even maintain some of the directors and some of the management team. When it is not friendly, then it becomes a nightmare because the directors then convince the shareholders about the long-term opportunities of that company and therefore tell them to resist. Sometimes they are not able to because shareholders also want premiums on their shares. So that's the context of the WASA project. The financial close, the transaction will close around January because they have to go through processes. Number one, the 66% remaining has to vote and accept. Number two, the Ghana government has to accept it because the mining license is expiring in January. So if the Ghana government says we are not extending, then your investment is useless. You cannot have a mine. In principle, the Ghana government has given them the indication that they will extend the mining license, so that's not an issue. And then they have to go through the regulatory regime of the Toronto Stock Exchange. So if all these conditions are met, then around January, WASA will now belong to the Chinese, Shifeng Geelong Gold Mining. What does it mean to the current WASA operation? When a new player comes in, few things. They come in with their own business culture, their own strategy on how to mine. Before they do the acquisition, they would have done a lot of due diligence on the life of mine plans and so on. So they'll come up with a risk structure plan. They will embed new management into place. They might maintain some of the current management, but they will bring in their own, especially the CEOs and people at the top. So people at the lower level might not feel it too much. In some instances, they might say the company is too fat, too many employees, they will start retrenching. In other instances, they might think it's okay. We just need to do a bit of reshuffle in the management team and set our strategy. So it's not something that's going to shake things up too much in WASA in terms of jobs. But at a higher level, you will see some changes taking place. That is the implication for these mergers and acquisitions. I'll give you a few examples. I'll do a detailed lecture on mergers and acquisitions at some stage to UMass and K University. But for now, it's a high level one. I'll give you a few examples. There were two brothers who had ownership of one of the big iron ore operations in Brazil called MBR in those days. The two brothers had a misunderstanding and they decided that they're going to sell. Now at that stage, MBR was the second largest iron ore producer in Brazil and the fourth in the world. So definitely the big players were interested. So I was in Sydney and I was called to Brazil to go into the virtual data room to advise one of the big mining companies. So we analyzed it, came up with a valuation, and then this was BHP. Unfortunately, the CFO of BHP was too quick to go into the market to say we are acquiring MBR. Now, when the transaction hasn't gone through, anything can happen. So then Vale, which is the biggest, which by then was the biggest iron ore producer in the world, one of the biggest iron ore producers in the world, sitting in Brazil, didn't want BHP or Rio Tinto to come close to them because to give a counter offer, which was better than BHP's. Now, because Vale sells to Europe, the European Commission stepped in that it might be monopolistic for them to acquire all the iron ore assets in Brazil. I was working for a company called AME Mineral Economics. I had issued a report on the iron ore industry, and that report was subpoenaed by the European Commission. And I was told to report to Brussels to testify. And testifying in those forums is not an easy one. Fortunately, the lawyers in Australia said the European Commission didn't have jurisdiction in Australia, and therefore I wasn't obliged to go and testify. So they ended up buying a copy of the report. Now, in those days, we will sell this report for about $20,000. But because the European Commission needed it for a very important decision, I recall the MD sold it for about 3 times the price to make money out of it. So that's how these things go. Now, all of a sudden, Vale acquired MBR, and then they became the largest iron ore producer in the world. Now, the Australians will not sit. Rio Tinto and BHP will just not sit. So 5 o'clock, we had finished work. I was getting ready to go home, and then I got a call to report to one of the big banks in Australia. We went there at about 5:30. We left there about 2 a.m., putting strategies in place for Rio Tinto to acquire a company called North, which was also the 3rd largest producer in Australia. And all the reason why they took over North was going to construct a new railway line that was going to pump 50 million tons per year of iron ore into the market. And for Rio Tinto, this was a no, because it will depress iron ore prices. So between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m., our strategy was to convince some of the shareholders to sell at a premium to Rio Tinto. By 2 days, Rio Tinto had acquired 51% of the company. Now, this was an unfriendly one because the directors were resisting it. They were trying to convince the shareholders that the long-term growth of the company was good. But because other institutional shareholders sold 51%, they didn't have a choice, so they had to sell. Now, my own personal example, me and 3 colleagues decided to use the small money we have for exploration for lead and zinc in Australia. Fortunately, we've had a big fund. I tried to convince my colleagues not to go for public listing, but raise funds from the private sector to develop these assets. They decided that they will list it. We listed within 2 months, the Chinese had moved in to acquire 51% of the company. So we were forced to sell our shares. So that's how mergers and acquisitions work. So in the context of WASA, not too much to worry, but there's going to be some restructuring. Other developments in Ghana, Awaso, same thing. Bonsai, which owns Awaso, is a Chinese company. They bought the project from Rio Tinto Alcan. And as part of the conditions for the Ghana government to accept the purchase, they told Bonsai to construct the railway line from Awaso to Takoradi because they've been hauling on trucks, which are very unsafe and costly. Secondly, they needed to build an alumina plant to refine the bauxite. Over 10 years now, it hasn't happened. So now the government gave them the conditions, the experts, a whole number of Chinese experts. So 1, reduce the number of experts. 2, you need to do the railway line. And 3, you need to build the alumina plant. Now they couldn't comply. So their mining license is expiring in January next year, and it's not going to be renewed. Therefore, they have to leave. So as I speak, they are in discussions with a Ghanaian company to purchase it from them. Why? You can just walk away, but you have to pay retrenchment packages. You have to pay people who want to retire and so on and so forth. So that one is a friendly one. Well, it's unfriendly because they are being forced to leave. You either comply or you leave. But it's friendly because the negotiations is a mutual negotiations with the Ghanaian company on the valuation and then the exit protocols. Other developments, one of the challenges when I was in Ghana, one of the challenges I found was the banks are not too keen. They don't understand, I think last time I mentioned it, they don't understand the opportunities in mining. And therefore they only look at the risk side. So we've been having, when I was in Ghana, I was having discussions with a number of colleagues to fill that funding gap until the banks come up to speed. And therefore we are trying to bring in an equity funding company into West Africa. Now they need a lot of information to convince themselves. So I've thrown a challenge to one of your ex-presidents, Ismail Anafo. I've given him his first consulting role to do a report on the mining and mineral potential in West Africa, which he is currently working on. And that will form the basis of a decision on the opportunities in West Africa for this company to position themselves for equity funding. So that's ongoing at the moment. We expect Anafo to come up with a report in about a couple of weeks' time and then progress that discussion. So what that fund will do is, especially for local entrepreneurs, those of you who want to form a consortium and go to small-scale mining, you have to go through the rudiments of geology, estimating your resources, how much gold you have, your business plan, how much equipment, pumps, excavators, and so on. The money will not be given to you directly. It will be used to purchase those equipment for you, and then you pay it back in the form of gold or other means. So it's going to bridge the funding gap, especially for local entrepreneurs. The other developments around us is Nigeria. Nigeria is quickly trying to diversify from oil and gas and paying a lot of attention to mining. They've been to every international conference that I've been. You see the Nigerian minister or somebody from the ministry doing presentations on the mining potential in Nigeria. Now it's paid off. A company by name, a Canadian company by name Thor Exploration is opening the first large-scale gold mine in Nigeria. The Nigerian mining has been small scale to medium scale. Now this is the first one, which will produce about 85,000 ounces of gold per year. The project is called the Segilola project. They poured their first gold in July, and they hiring a lot from Ghana. As I said, somebody approached me in LinkedIn and said, I've found this job, and it was in Nigeria. He's going into a geotechnical role. They are employing Ghanaian metallurgists, geologists, mining engineers, because Ghana has the experience in mining. So a number of developments are going on there. In addition to Sebilola, they also have a project in Senegal called the Douta Project. It's also advanced in exploration. They have a joint venture with Barrick in Burkina Faso. So the question is, why are these Canadian companies going into other West African countries? In fact, if you look at risks, Nigeria is even riskier than Ghana. But they are not in Ghana, they are in Nigeria, they are in Senegal, they are in Burkina Faso. Why? And I keep on telling the Ghana government that you cannot rely on the Minerals Commission regulations that they put in place so many years ago, because countries are taking that as a benchmark and improving on them, tax profile and so on. So countries find it easier in terms of tax exemptions, ability to do business in the Ivory Coast, in Burkina Faso, Senegal, and even in Nigeria. And that's why you see few companies doing exploration in Ghana. Most of them are moving out of Ghana. So until we get our policies in place, that makes it friendly for other companies. In fact, I was speaking to one of the guys at Minerals Commission, and he said, our gold is our gold. Even if it takes 100 years for others to come in, that's fine. It belongs to us. We are not going to change our regulations for the sake of investors. But this person is narrow-minded because he's not thinking of you, the graduates coming out. When are you going to get your next job? Right? That is the mindset of somebody working for a government. It doesn't matter. This is our country. We'll put in the laws that suit us. Meanwhile, it is very difficult to find companies that will do exploration because exploration is very risky. I've been on a project where we spent 50 million and iron ore prices collapsed, and this was in Canada. So we had to put the project on hold. It's very risky to get a technically, economically viable project. And that's why you see these mergers and acquisitions, because they want to cut down on exploration. Newmont, Goldcorp, they came together because they want to increase, Newmont wanted to increase their reserve base. So by acquiring all their reserves all of a sudden increase, and they can cut down on exploration. The Chinese are doing the same thing. They don't want to risk exploration funds that may or may not come up with a mine. Therefore, they are acquiring mines. So as a country, Ghana needs to rethink, especially if they want to create jobs for you guys. We see a lot of opportunities in the bauxite alumina space, but it become a political battle. And I've met with the NPP, NDC. These are the two major political parties in Ghana. You need to sit and think about the youth. When you meet them, I meet them all the time at the VIP lounge. They are friends. You see somebody saying, I'm in opposition, give me money. Then the person, the guy in NPP will give them $300, $500. They are all friends from Legon, KNUST, and other places. But when they come out publicly, it's like a fight. And they are not thinking about the future of graduates that are coming out. Now, for the first time, I have never seen so many mining engineers unemployed. Previously, by the time you graduate, Dr. Zapata said it, you have 3 jobs. But now, after national service, you have people with first class, work underground, work in open cuts, sitting home. They can't get jobs. And the good news is some of these guys are trying to go into the private sector, do other things apart from mining. I have a friend in Australia who struggled for the first 2 years and then decided to set up his own company doing some courier services and so on, and in the end managed to set up a very good company. So diversification is coming into place. So don't lose hope yet. Unfortunately, there isn't much exploration. If you take the Newmonts and some of these companies, there isn't much junior companies coming into the country doing exploration, but there's huge potential, especially in the Northern Gold Belt, where we have Cardinal and other companies. Goldstone, which is pouring their first gold, has huge exploration potential because they are all body stretches from Kumasi to Apukere in the Adansi district. And they are now developing the free oxides and the shallow areas, and they're going to do extensive exploration. So that's good news for the geologists and so on. So I wanted to give you these updates that a number of things are happening around West Africa, especially in Nigeria, where they are attracting a number of Ghanaian mining engineers, geologists, geotechnical engineers, metallurgists, and so on. Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Guinea, and so on. If you can't find a job in Ghana, you don't just sit, you have to look after yourself economically. So you have to look at what is happening around you to see the potential. Now, the bad news is this, Nobody is just going to pick up a graduate and put you as an expert because you have to go through government protocols to become an expert. So you need a little bit of local experience and so on. So the challenge is for governments and policymakers to start rethinking on how to position you for future jobs, because there are too many graduates coming out. In fact, metallurgy and mineral processing is a classic case where you have KNUST, you have UMAT, those of you doing HSC, in fact, it's done almost in many universities, and therefore you have hundreds of people coming out with few jobs opportunities. So it's a challenge for governments, but they need to sit and rethink on these strategies and open up the economies for investors to come in. On this note, thank you very much for your attention, and I'll hand it over to the moderator. If there are any questions directed to me, I'll try to understand, but most of it should go to Simon since he's the main speaker. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks so much, Mr. Henry Ainshi, for the updates and also for educating us on the trends. We really do appreciate that. So, okay, so now to the questions and answers section. Please note, you are supposed to type your questions in the chat box. So I read it out to Mr. Yeboah or Mr. Henry to answer based on who is going to. So kindly note that. Okay, so at the moment, we have some questions in there and I'll be reading them out. So the first question here is, please, how do PhD students get permanent residence? I think this goes to Mr. Yeboah. Hello. Hello. Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yes, so first of all, you have to complete your PhD and go through the point system. So the point system, I explained that a little bit. So first of all, whatever you did in your PhD has to be on the occupation list. And then, the point system. So the point system, if you do PhD, you get, so for the point system, you have to get minimum of 65. But at the moment, just because there's so many people, international students in Australia or international graduates in Australia, 65 is not enough because lots of people have the 65. So the points is, so the point is actually increasing. So if you do PhD, you get 20 points from having done PhD, and then your age. If you are between 25 and 33, you get 30 points. And having done your PhD in Australia also gives you 5 points. And at the moment, if you are single, it also gives you 10 points. And if you did something related to maths and science, that was before, you could also get points for that. And before, you could also get, having done the PhD, you could actually use it as experience, work experience, because it's a paid job. But I think there's been a little bit of changes. So let's put the work experience aside. So so when you add all the points up, and if you also have previous experience, maybe from Ghana, you could also add that. So it makes it a little bit easier for people with PhD because of the point system. Because if you do the PhD, you get more points than someone who did bachelor's, if that helps.
hello.
Hello?
Thank you. Thanks so much for answering the question, sir. Please, the next question you have here is, okay, so first is like, it goes like, my network hasn't been stable, but I must say I imbibe certain keynotes. Thank you, Mr. Simon, for the inspirational presentation. My questions are, so the first question, in your presentation, I got to learn that there are actually no scholarships for international students studying bachelor's or master's degree. How about a PhD? Is there a scholarship available for international students? And then the second question, again, is there a case where someone skips master's degree and right after bachelor's degree pursues PhD? That is in the case of an international student. And lastly, from the same person, finally, is there a possibility to study whilst working to cater for certain expenses? I think that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, so I will touch on the work aspect. Yes, you can study and work at the same time. The minimum by law is 20 hours. But look, usually people, do more than that. Yeah, provided, yeah, you don't have to do that, but usually people do that. Lots of people work more than the 20 hours. And that was why, in my case, I could pay for my own teaching fee. Yeah, otherwise there was no way I could have done that. So yes, you could definitely work and to cater for yourself, to pay for your rent, to pay for your transport and food, and also your tuition fees. And you asked something in relation to the PhD. Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, okay. The question was, is there a case where someone skips master's degree and right after bachelor's degree pursues PhD? That is in the case of an international student.
Yes. So thanks very much. Yes. So after bachelor's, is different for everyone. So I have a friend who actually did his bachelor's at Tech, KNUST, and didn't get any work experience in Ghana, but he had first class. I think he did something in science, but came to QUT to do finance. So yes, you don't have to do bachelor's, you don't have to do master's. You can straight up jump from bachelor's to PhD, but you have to do well. You have to usually get like first class before you can pursue that.
Oh, okay, thank you, sir. I think there's another question to it. He was like, I got to learn that there are actually no scholarships for international students studying bachelor's or master's degree. How about PhD? Is there a scholarship available for international students?
Yeah, I think Mr. Henry shed a lot on that aspect. All right, so for bachelor's, yes, as I said, anyway, yeah, so there's not many for bachelor's. I would say there is not, and usually if you have to get, yeah, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to say, but yeah, they could be, but usually it's for the domestic students. But as I explained, usually those from the Middle East come with their own sponsorship from their government. So yeah, I would say it that way. In terms of PhD, there is scholarship. The Australian government award full scholarship to international students, and that covers their tuition fees, and not just tuition fee. Yeah, it also covers their rent and things like transportation and other things, other related aspects for example, if you have to do a project, they usually give you money to cater for that.
Maybe just to come in on the bachelor's to PhDs, our own Kwesi Ampofu had a bachelor's degree at UMatt, finished his service, and then he moved straight to PhD in KUT. So it's possible, but it depends. You have to have a first class. In most instances, you have to have a first class, and the research area is an area that is scarce for the professor to be able to attract you. So it depends on the circumstances. Not all students or graduates with first class are able to move into PhD straight away. It depends on the circumstances, the area of research, and the competitiveness, the availability of good graduates, and so on.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Please, the next question is, thank you very much for your presentation. My question, you spoke of permanent residency. I want to know if you are in Ghana and you want a job and you get a job in Australia, can you work there with just a working permit, or you need permanent residency before you work?
Okay, so thank you. So I know a couple of people who actually, got sponsorship from Australian companies to, to come to Australia to work. So you don't need permanent residency while you're in Ghana in order to come to Australia. A company can offer you a job, and based on that, you can come. And when you come, then you go through the process of applying for your permanent residency. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simon. Please, there are no more questions in the chat section. Please, if you have any questions, keep them coming. You could type them so I read them out to Mr. Simon. And if there are no questions, I think I would move on to the closing remarks, but I'll wait a while if there are more questions.
Hello. Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Yeboah. I want to ask, how has your choice of program affected your career in any way? And there's a follow-up question that, in your work experience so far, have you ever faced any case of racial abuse, and how do you overcome that, if only you did? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So, so it's very important what you study. So, so what you study would, determine how quick you can get a job. So, for instance, if you do, it all depends on you. Sometimes let me put it that way, but generally, if you're an international and you do like courses like accounting, I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but in most cases, yes. If you do courses like accounting, banking, it's usually tough to get into the workforce. It's not the same for everyone, as I mentioned. Yeah, but most people I've come across, it's very tough for them getting into the workforce with certain, yes, with certain courses they did at uni. And also in terms of racial discrimination, I guess for me personally, I don't really focus much on that because we've come a long way in society. Yeah, 30 years back or 20 years back, I think it was really tough. And I wouldn't say there's no racism, but for me, I think that as an individual, you have to improve yourself and you have to know what you do as well. Do you know your job? and also being a nice person, you know, and being respectful. If you do that, I think you are going to get along with people. And look, sometimes it doesn't also matter whatever you do. Some people are just not going to like you. And sometimes it's not about white to black. It's even in Ghana, you know, sometimes come across your own countrymen or who just don't, you know, like you. So there is racial discrimination, yes, but I guess it boils down to who you are as a person and how you operate, if that helps. Maybe Mr. Henry too can share on this, can share his views on this.
Yes, in terms of jobs that are in high demand, it varies from year to year and the economy and so on. In our days, when I was at the managerial level in Australia, the mining industry was booming. And therefore, there was the need to attract. Unfortunately, we didn't have many in Australia who were interested in mining. There are various reasons. About 80% of Australians live in 5 cities close to the sea. Everybody wants the sea life. Only 20% live in the hinterland, the huge area. And this is where the mines are. So we couldn't attract mining engineers, especially, into the mines. And therefore, through the OZAMM and other organizations, we lobbied the government to introduce what they call 457 visa. I'm not too sure whether it's still even available now, for companies to be able to sponsor or to attract mining engineers from other countries. If Dr. Zapata is around, maybe he can share his experience. I think he came through that experience, through those company recruitment from Ghana into Australia. I'm not too sure. But then it changed. The mining industry went down, and it was even removed from the occupational list for skilled migration. I don't know whether it's come back again. So because it went down, a number of graduates or students were not. In fact, I met a Ghanaian professor at University of New South Wales. He was a former lecturer at UMAT, who told me the number of students had reduced to about 5 for the whole mining engineering program. So people lost interest because you go in, you get retrenched, and then it's very difficult to get a job. Camborne School of Mines, as I told you the other time, has canceled the whole mining engineering program. Now we, the old students, are trying to force it back into the system again. And now there's a discussion on, rather than coming full-time, you can even sit in Ghana and finish your mining engineering program at Camborne through online, and a number of, maybe you'll visit there a few occasions and so on. So they're trying to innovate to attract more students. Now, the jobs that have been in high demand now, nursing is one area. Unfortunately, not many, maybe none of you is a nurse, because you can never go wrong. You always need nurses and doctors. Now, doctors, it became difficult with the Australian Medical Board. The exams were so tough that foreign doctors were not able to pass. But because there were shortages in the regional areas, if you don't want to do the exams, then you have to go and work in a regional area. When I say regional area, they're the villages. I know of a Ghanaian who went there, and the condition is you need to stay there for at least 5 years before you can move out into the city. And he was so liked by the community that when his 5 years was due, and because his children were growing up, he needed to go into the city, they said they would sponsor the children into schools outside the region so that he stays. The Australian government also, besides the point system, introduced the regional migration. I think it's still there. So for areas that are so difficult to attract people, in fact, I know of a Ghanaian friend who went on regional migration to South Australia. So for those areas that are so difficult to attract people, they relax the skilled migration rules. For instance, during my time, the cutoff was 45 years. After 45 years, you cannot go on a skilled migration program, but they relaxed it to about 50 years so that others can come in. And I remember this Ghanaian friend came in. There was an immigration officer at the airport in Adelaide to welcome him into South Australia. The condition is you need to work in South Australia for 2 years before you can move to other cities. They gave me a list of all the mining companies in South Australia where he can apply. He went to church the following Sunday. Somebody gave him a car, his second car to use. They really appreciated skills coming into the region. And now he stayed there for about 10 years and is still in South Australia. So states Australia is a federal system. There are here you have in Ghana you have regional ministers. Where they have what they call premiers. Premiers is like the prime minister of a state, and they make rules. For instance, with the COVID, the state government, the federal government has come up with I think 80% vaccination. They will open up the economies, but Western Australia said no, we will not until we hit 90%. Before we open it for international travel and so on and so forth. So the states are very powerful in coming up with innovative ways to attract people. I hope that explains it much better for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Please, our next question. Please, can attachment and internship be considered when it comes to working experience, especially with a newly graduate?
Maybe I'll take that one because I've been involved. So as part of the Alzheimer initiatives, I tried to lobby some companies in Australia to bring some of you on exchange programs. But there were a number of Australian mentees who wanted the African experience. So I thought it's a good fit to bring in the African mentees into Ghana, especially, and get some of you into Australia. Unfortunately, the academic semester systems didn't work too much because in Australia, the long vacation is November to about February. And in those days, around that time, a lot of you are in school because you get back to school around November. So it didn't work out very well. But for other countries where there is an alignment on the academic system, it's allowed. In fact, I know of when we were at BHP, we brought in a number of students from India to come and work at our mines and so on. So it depends on the alignment of semesters, the relationships, and so on. So for instance, I think the Gloria administration tried to have a link to some of the chapters in Australia. There was some communication going on, but the other administrations didn't follow up very well. And through those collaborations, now I think Abigail was telling me there's a platform of all the chapters where they coordinate and come up with ideas. Then you can have that arrangement. Now, unfortunately, the Ghana visa is so difficult to get. And when I say this, people wonder why. There have been instances where I've tried to bring in 3 students from Australia to Ghana, and their visas were declined. And then the explanation is they're coming to take Ghana jobs. But these people were just coming for 3 months vacation training. And the whole idea was, if they come and they get interested, they go and market Ghana. And then they can also use the platform to convince their bosses to bring in Ghanaians into Australia. But the Ghanaian government refused the visas. As hard as I tried, they declined because they said there are many Ghanaian, well, it is true too, there are many Ghanaian students who can't get places on internship. Why should we bring 3 students from Australia to pick up those jobs? So it was declined. So it's possible, but sometimes it's very, very difficult. Now the companies will put the attachments or internships online. And then they will specify the periods. It's between this and this period. So they cannot just manipulate it because your semester is different from theirs. And therefore it becomes a challenge.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is, are there opportunities in the field of supply chain and logistics in Australia?
Let's take it.
Yes, I think there are so many opportunities in Australia, but I guess that once again, companies would prefer to employ people with permanent residency or citizenship. And so if you're coming in with no permanent residency or citizenship, I guess you might struggle to get a job like that. Yeah, and we'll leave it to Mr. Henry to add to it. Hello, Mr. Henry,
yes.
do you have something to add to that?
Yes, you are right. You are right, but it depends. It also depends on the skills level. So, for instance, if it's in the mining area or chemical industry, and you work with some of the big multinationals, such as Anglo Gold Ashanti, Newmont, you've acquired all this experience, then it's easier for them to attract you. Because in Australia, like any other countries, you have to go through a process. The company might be interested in you, but there's no guarantee that the government will grant you the visa. Because the government then will ask a number of questions. Can't you find that person in Australia? And you have to justify why you are bringing the person in. Maybe we can find him, but he's not as experienced as this guy. This guy has done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which aligns with the expertise that we are looking for. So that's how it works. I'll give you my own example when I was being transferred from the United States to Australia. Now, there were many mining engineers in Australia, but because the mine itself is in a place called Newman, middle of nowhere, temperature is 45 degrees. Not many Australians want to live in those areas. So BHP was then able to justify why it was important to bring some Americans into Newman. It wasn't just me. There were environmental engineers, myself, some mechanical engineers. But they went through a process to justify why they could transfer us from the United States to Australia. So it depends on the demand. It depends on the area. If they can't attract Australians, then they can justify bringing in expertise, whether it's supply chain. Supply chain, you can never go wrong in anywhere in the world. It's such a high demand area. If you look at Anglo Gold Ashanti, there's a guy who came to the KNUST conference, Clifford Bynum. He's a chemical engineer. To diversify into supply chain, and he's one of the best in the country. Now he's worked with Ghana Gas, Newmont.
Hello, Mr. Henry.
Metallurgy, mining, whatever.
Hello, Mr. Henry.
Sorry, somebody tried to cut me off. Somebody was trying to call. So it's what I was trying to say is it's a very good area to dive. Somebody is trying to interfere with my listing. So it's an area that you can diversify into and explore. But as someone said, it all depends on experience and whether you're a permanent resident. I'll give you another example. It's a Ghanaian. Because he had experience working with some of the multinationals, Anglo Gold Ashanti, it was very easy for her to get a job. But then they put her on probation, and it was one of these working visas. So she said she's going to apply, she's going to let a company apply for a permanent residency for her because she thought she was one of the hardworking ladies. And I advised her not to, because until you finish your probation, there is no guarantee that you even have a job. So I advised her, finish your probation before you even make that application. She told me a British lady had been approved for permanent residency. The company is processing for her, so she will put it in. She put it in, 2 weeks probation, they canceled his contract. They canceled her contract. And the reason was, it's so easy to find a replacement for her. She was not that experienced like the British lady who had 15 years experience. She had only about 3 to 5 years experience. So they thought, why should we spend $10,000 or more trying to get you the permanent residency when we can find a replacement in Australia? So she was fired. She didn't take my advice and she was fired. So all these depends on circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Henry and Mr. Yeboah. The next question is there a way the government of Australia can offer citizens? Hello? Is there a way of Australia can offer citizens?
Okay. Fidelia, what about the 3 cities?
Hello, Samuel Atta, please mute your mic. Thank you. Is there a way the government of Australia can offer citizens on a student to stay because they did exceptionally well?
Okay. You're talking about citizenship. The answer is no, because you have to go through a process, and the process is even as when you get your working permit, you have to go through a process of permanent residency. In my time, after 2 years of permanent residency, you become a citizen. And there's an interview process. So they will ask you, what is the constitution? What are your rights when you go overseas? I recall I had about 4 questions because they were so desperate to get us on this citizenship. Now, just to give you an example, when I was in Australia as a mining engineer, I decided to do my business studies. At that stage, I was a permanent resident, and I applied for HEPS, the one someone talked about. Now, they said, I've finished my 2 years. I decided not to be a citizen, and therefore I just want to use the Australian facilities to benefit myself. So they said that to me to rethink about becoming an Australian citizen. In those days, the demand was so great that they wanted all these permanent residents to migrate into citizenship. Now it's changed. I think it's 5 years or even more, and so on. So for that to happen, like Ghana can introduce citizenship for somebody unless the person has done something exceptionally good to the benefit of the country. It can happen to Australia. But I've lived in the country for almost 30 years now, and I've never come across an example of somebody being taken from Ghana or some other country and being conferred citizenship as such. It's possible, but it has to be something exceptional. Now, for permanent residency, it can happen. I know a Ghanaian who graduated in Canada, did a paper on some technology, and the CSIRO, which is the research arm of the government, brought him in. They read his journal, his article in one of the journals, and then brought him in as a permanent resident because he was going to work in a very strategic area. Now, remember, there are areas, if you're a permanent resident, you cannot even work in government institutions such as the military or the police or intelligence and so on. So the rationale for such a move is for this person to be able to migrate from permanent residency to citizenship so that they can put him in strategic areas of work and so on. So it's possible, even in Ghana, it's possible, but it's highly, highly unlikely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Please, the next question is, thank you very much, Simon and Henry, for the insight. The question, getting national service to do at the mines nowadays is very difficult. Most graduates from mining-related universities are forced to go to non-mining related industries. Now, every job demands working experience and the likes. What advice do you have for someone who wants to further his or her education with no working experience?
I'll take this, and then someone can come in. I've been giving this advice to a number of you that the best option, the ideal option, is to have work experience before you go and do your master's, because it helps you to practicalize things a bit better. Now, because I had about maybe 10 years experience before I did my business studies, in fact, there are instances where I was able to challenge the professors because I came in with a lot of industry experience, from human resources to industrial relations to marketing and so on. And when a professor is becoming too theoretical, what is not aligned to industry practice, we were able to point it out, not only me, those of us who came from the industry. So it is always ideal to get experience before you do a master's and PhD. Now, Isaac Zapata is on. He's a classic example. Very experienced mining engineer, and then later on decided to do his PhD. You cannot bullshit him, right? Because he's done all the basics. He's done mine planning, he's done all. So when he's putting that into a research, there's credibility. And then the difficulty that we have with a lot of some of your professors is bachelor's, master's, PhD, no industry experience. Now in overseas, those who attract funding to give some of you scholarships. I had a professor who was a technical services manager before he came into Colorado School of Mines to teach. And even as he's still teaching. He has about $10 million of research grants from Newmont, BHP, and other companies, and he's giving them out to students on masters and PhDs to do those research. So that's when practical experience comes in. But if you are constrained and you finish your national service and there's nowhere to go and a scholarship comes up, it will be stupid for you to say, I'm not going to take it. I'm just going to wait for the next 2 to 3 years and get some practical experience. Because once you get that opportunity to go to Germany, Japan, Australia, the chances of you getting internships or even after graduate work is very high for you to gain that experience. The difficulty comes in when you don't gain any practical experience and you go from bachelor's, master's, PhD. They won't be interested. I have a Ghanaian friend who'd had about 3 years experience in New Zealand and then went for his PhD. Now he came back to Australia and he struggled. Now the companies will take him, 6 months time, he'll call me, I've been fired, I didn't pass through probation. It's not that he's not good, but they put a premium on your PhD. So they're paying you more than what they would pay somebody with a bachelor's degree. And therefore, if your performance is just equivalent to somebody with a bachelor's degree, they don't see the point. They will terminate your contract. And he struggled in the mining industry. In fact, he couldn't hold any job for more than 6 months. So he ended up going into telecommunications because his PhD was on resource planning for the mining industry, but he was able to apply it into telecommunication. There he lasted for about 6 years before he got retrenched. So that's why the practical experience becomes handy. But if you don't have that opportunity, especially in Ghana, where things are so tough, then when the opportunity comes up, you should take it, whether it's through family sponsorship or scholarship or sponsorships or research grants. I think you should take it. But the advice is when you get an opportunity, go and do internships, do after graduate programs, work, get some experience. Don't get me wrong, you can still go into academia. But even if you don't get a chance and you do bachelor's, master's, PhD in your academia, it is important that you take your holidays time to go and work in the industry and understand what is going on so that you can practicalize some of the concepts. Now, 5 years ago, I was reviewing the project work of a UMass graduate, and I was in shock about what he was going to present as a final year project. And because he wasn't getting the proper guidance or he wasn't getting the practical aspect of what he was doing, right? And so on. So you can graduate with these things and so on, but it becomes very important when you have the practical experience. I've told you several times that Camborne School of Mines, you cannot graduate without at least 3 months internship. They will not give you the degree. Even if they'll give it to you, it is called what you call ordinary degree. You cannot use it for a master's degree. You cannot use it for a PhD. So it forces people to go, students to go and work and get at least 3 months experience in addition to the test mine, which is already close to the school where you get practical experience and so on. So practical experience is good, it's ideal, but it's not a showstopper for your for further education. I think I'm clear.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Sir. Thank you. I think there are no more questions in the chat box. Or does anyone have a question? If there's no question, I think we would move on to the closing remarks. And this is going to be by Mr. Raphael Glover.
Okay, good afternoon. Please, can anyone hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay, so today we've been given knowledge by our great brother, let me say our brother though, Mr. Yeboah, for an insightful thing he has given to us. And I'd like to involve everyone to this thing. Let us go to our comment section and give comments on, let's use this emoji, the fire emoji, to show appreciation to how we're able to attain knowledge this afternoon. So please, let's go straight to our comment section and do such. Then we'll continue with our remarks. Okay, so Daddy, Mr. Henry, please, you've been of good much help to us, and now knowledge or information is being expensive, and you've done this straight from your heart, and taking care of your children and giving them knowledge on how to become successful in the job market. And we really, really appreciate you for this opportunity. And we thank Mr. Simon for an enlightenment of how things are being done in Australia, and Mr. Japata for still being with us and still supporting us. And Mr. Henry, please, we thank you very much. I don't know how to say it, but I'm very speechless right now. And we really thank you for such remarkable initiative. And we also thank the executives for their incredible work and their enthusiasm, their exuberance in helping us and helping our colleagues. And one thing I learned from Mr. Simon was that we should network. Networking is very important. So I would like to entreat everyone that know ourselves. We are from different backgrounds. Others are from KNUST, others are from UMads, and different group, very active. We should know ourselves so that chance that pops up, we'll be able to bring ourselves together, and as an awesome member or as an awesome group, we will strive in the job market. And I would like to thank everyone for joining this webinar, and have a nice day. And I'll hand over to the moderator to continue. Thank you.
So thank you everyone once again for joining this webinar. We hope whatever has been said here would really, we know whatever has been said here would really be of help to us. So please, whatever that we've heard here, let it be a part of us. Let's also get to know how to network. Networking cuts through everything. Throughout our presentations, we've realized that network has really been of a higher standard. So please, let's take notes of everything that was said here. So do have a good evening and enjoy your day wherever you are. Bye.
Bye.